I am, a little bit about myself, I'm a business owner, small business owner. We run a contracting business where we grade sites and we do a little DOT work. My brother and I have had it for 29 years. I enjoy farming, so I do that as my hobby. And we have raised beef cattle and we do a little soybean. Now we're milking a cow twice a day, so I don't like it to get bored. Like it's all keep going. But anyway, that's my passion. So just want to let you know a little bit about me. And I want to talk about Dane Wigington, who I get a lot of my information from. Dane and I have become real good friends the last couple of years and talk several times a week. He has put his whole life into this, over 20 years, not his whole life, but a big part of it. He puts his own finances in this to do his research and his studies. He even has to sell assets every now and then. He does not take money from anybody, so he does this solely on the purpose of trying to help humanity and save this planet. He knows the dangers that we're facing with this. He's been trying to get this awareness out. I can't even imagine. I've watched this for 10, 12 years, but really have been involved in learning and getting myself educated the last 5 years. I can't imagine doing this 20-something years and everybody calling you as crazy as they call me. So, and with that, I'd like to say that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. But I was going to get us started with a 4-minute little video of the Deming. If you go to geoengineeringwatch.org, I've got pamphlets in the back that Dane gave us and carded on there. And if you watch a 2-hour documentary, it's long, but you need to watch that documentary. It says a lot in there. Then there's also a 90-second of Helene that you can watch. And then he has in there a weekly update every week, so you can kind of see what's going on throughout the nation and the globe. But anyway, we'll go ahead and start a little 4-minute clip to kind of get everybody.
Official sources continue to claim that the jet aircraft trails, which linger, spread, and fill our skies with sun-blocking haze, are just condensation. But that narrative is a lie. Atmospheric particulate testing has now conclusively proven that the jet aircraft dispersed trails and haze in our once deep blue skies is not condensation, as we have been told.
They are absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud cover, period, in the report.
I kept saying to people, what is this? Because now the sky is no longer blue, it's starting to turn gray. And what I found was a lot of people were pretending it wasn't happening. It was kind of like it was not socially acceptable to do, we're all going to pretend this is not really happening. And I thought, this is very bad.
Prior history has proven that we have used weather back in the Vietnam conflict. Suddenly, you don't take a weapon off the table that was able to provide good data, provided a good reason for it to be used at that time. Should you expect that it is available on demand to have the ability to modify weather? Absolutely, within this country and others.
Because we're talking about a very expensive global spraying program that involves all, if not almost all, sovereign nations.
We have government documents, Senate documents, patents, military documents. We have film footage of them turning dispersions on and off with nozzles visible. We have lab tests from all over the globe verifying that the exact elements named in climate engineering patents are showing up.
We have collected samples directly from the emissions from aircrafts. We have identified particles in there and have shown nanoparticles of these metal oxides that are damaging to biological tissue and affect human health.
Elements like aluminum, barium, strontium, polymer fibers, all of which are highly toxic, all of which are being absorbed by the entire web of life, including us.
I know enough to know that we're talking about serious.
Climate engineering fallout is completely contaminating our waters, our soils, our crops, and every breath we take, thus impacting every aspect of our health. Geoengineering particles are nanoscale. So small, they go straight through our lung lining, into our bloodstream, and adhere to cell receptors like a plaque. Once absorbed, they are almost impossible to expel from our systems.
The layer was filled with these nanomaterials, and that was our first evidence that this is, that these nanomaterials are directly associated with the emissions from these planes.
We're simply asking people to investigate the facts and to stop believing the official denial.
This is an intentional research area with unknown purposes.
We need our military personnel, all branches of the service, we need all of their help. We need the answers to get to the bottom of this national security problem.
I don't know the education level here. I know I spoke to a lot of people, and a lot of people are very awake to all this, and so I wanted to show that, just to show that's just a 4-minute clip of a 2-hour documentary that Dane had put together, just to kind of give a brief oversight of his studies and what he's finding. Again, this is all about awareness, education of it, and then we got to get involved. And involvement means telling other people about it. I spoke at the well at the State House budget week, and it didn't go over too well. They thought I was crazy. I do not care. We're past that, and I'm beyond that. I want to read a quote from Lyndon B. Johnson. This was in 1958 and 62. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control the Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change tides and raise the levels of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperature climates to frigid. Whoever controls the weather controls the world. This is what he said in a speech that he gave. JFK Jr. in 1961. We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. In 1961, I saw on CBS where they were showing these they were calling it silver iodide, just silver iodide to dim the sun, and that's what the dimming is about. They told us then that our crop yields would go up if they dim the sun. They play us for stupid, and it's been going on since the patent was written in 1946. In 1947, they started this. I mean, it's been going on 70 years, something like that. They did this in the Vietnam War. That's how they created these torrential downpours and flooding. So, again, whoever controls the weather controls the war as well. Well, we know we're in an informational war, and probably a bigger war than we even know. But this weather manipulation is a big part of that war that they want to control us in, and that's what it's all about. It's death and control. We saw people say, "Well, who would do this? Well, who would put COVID vaccine out? Who would put COVID bioweapon out?" It's the same people. The Georgia Guidestones said they wanted 500 to 800 million people left on the earth, and I think that's exactly what they wanted. Hopefully we're going to win. The more people we wake up, the more aware we get of this and educate people with it, then we're going to have a better chance of doing that. So with this war, we've got illegals in the country, we got pandemics, we got the threat of world war coming on now, terrorist attacks, and of course, we've got geoengineering climate control. So it's geoengineering climate control and it's not chemtrails. I get scolded on that. Or stratospheric aerosol injection. So trying to differentiate that. A lot of people ask me why I omitted out of my bill. I turned a bill in on this. I've turned 2 bills in the South Carolina House. One is 3915 and one is 4010. I did the 4010 because they sent it straight to the judiciary, where it will sit for the remainder of its life. So I was trying to get it in ag where I could get it moved. So I took all the teeth out of it, and I also omitted cloud seeding. People want to know why I omitted cloud seeding. It's because of what is going on in the House in different areas, Idaho and Utah, and now Florida. And I'm gonna play y'all a little clip of Florida's Rainmaker is the name of the company. And they reached out to me as soon as I turned my bill in and said, oh, we need you to omit, cloud seeding. Well, I mean, that's an admission right there in itself that, it's going on. And they agreed with what I said on my bill about stratospheric aerosol injection and geoengineering climate control being so harmful to humans and our planet. What they're spraying is aluminum, barium, strontium, cadmium, silver iodide, sulfur oxide. They're even finding parasites in it and pathogens in it. So, and I'm sure Dr. Jean Patan, who we're blessed to have here today, is gonna broaden our view on that too. She is wide awake. But all this is getting in our water supplies, it's getting in our soils, it's getting in our plants. So we can do as much as we want to do of trying to get clean food and clean water, and they're still putting these in there, and they're called micro nanoparticles. So you can put 100,000 micro nanoparticles on one little strand of hair. So every breath that you're breathing, if you want to put that video up, the video of every breath that we're breathing, you're breathing up to 20 million micro nanoparticles per breath. And they'll go through the filters in your house for your HVAC, they go through the filters in your truck, they certainly go through the filters in our body, and they go straight to your blood supply, your brain, and your spinal cord. So we're being infected. This was one night I took with a headlamp. If you go outside at night and shine a headlamp up in the air, you'll constantly see these particles. Now this was more exaggerated than what it normally is. You'll see very small particles floating around. These particles float from 3 weeks to, I hear 2 years, but I feel confirmed with several months that these particles will float around. I used to be in the military right after I got out of high school, and I was ground-to-air missile, which is a Stinger missile. There's not a day goes by that I don't want that Stinger missile back. Shoot these down. You just get so fed up watching it, and the designs they're making with them are in our face. I think they've increased, in my opinion, in the last 2 years anyway. It's like they don't even care anymore. They're not trying to hide it. They've been hiding this for years from us and doing it in small bits and pieces, but I think we've upset their cart with Trump, so I think we may have them on the run with it. RFK Jr. Is on board with this. There's 25 states, South Carolina being one of them, that has turned a bill in to their state house to try to get this stopped. This is part of the MAHA movement. So make America healthy again, clean air, clean water, and clean food. So I think this is going to be I hope it is. And he's even asked Dane Wigington to be part of his team, but Dane thinks that he'll do more good behind the scenes, which I agree with him. And he said he would support him any way possible. So I call that hopium. It's still going to take we the people to stand up and fight for this. I don't think anything's just going to happen. And I certainly don't put my faith in any one man other than Jesus Christ. So. We had the trees come down from Helene. So the weather manipulation part of this is these these particles in the air. They have several different government patented military armament that is HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. I don't know if y'all have heard of that. It's a high frequency active auroral, and they've got direct energy weapons. They've got NexRad. The NexRads are on these 5G towers they put up when they shut us down for COVID and told us to stay at home. That's when all these were going up. The direct energy weapons, I always go into the store to just take pictures of Mountain Dew. I don't drink that stuff, but if you watch the Mountain Dew bottles, we had Lahaina that burn up. They had the Maui Blast come out. Then we had the Baja burn up, and they had the Baja Burst or something. I watch these Mountain Dew bottles. They've got voltage out, code red out. But a direct energy weapon is a very bad military weapon. It will certainly destroy things, let's just say that. The NexRad is something that, so when Helene came in, who's ever heard of a hurricane going 470 miles offshore into 6,000 foot elevation mountains and intensifying, in strength? You also see these hurricanes that go through Florida and go out into the Atlantic, and then they'll do a 360. And the Weather Channel say they're refueling, and then they do a 360 and come right back in, or they do a 90-degree, and then come up the coast. So if you watch these weather channels, NOAA, all the local channels, they put little bits and pieces in here. And the reason that they're doing that is because they are giving these weather reports from, there's two companies right now that I'm not going to say their names, but there's two companies receiving military contracts to do this through our taxpayer money. And they send the weather reports to all the local radio stations, all the local news stations, Weather Channel, NOAA. So all these weather reports are because they're manipulating the weather and they're creating this. So to listen to them closely, you can depict things that they pull out and put in the Weather Channel to kind of, it's absurd and insane what they say. And once you start paying attention to that, I just said that just so that everybody will start watching. They're lying to us just like the regular media stations are lying to us. It's all part of the same system. They are putting 40 to 60 million tons per year of these chemicals out of us. I think that, I do not know, that's 4 or 5 year old data. I would almost guess and say it's doubled or maybe even tripled in that time, because we're all paying attention now. You can't even stay on your phone long enough to hide and not notice what's going on in our skies. So these particles in autopsies, they are every single person that they're doing an autopsy on they're getting 0.5% of the brain matter with microplastic nanoparticles. Then we still have the aluminum particles and the strontium and the cadmium and everything else involved in that. We've all seen Alzheimer's rates go sky high and dementia. We also see cancer going off the charts. I'm gonna say a part of this is cancer. Other parts are from the other bioweapon, I think. I'm sure. I just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings with that. But, we're in a war. We're in a war. And if we don't stand up and start demanding that this stop, the problem I'm having with my bill is that it's FAA, so it's Federal Aviation Airspace. The state can't do anything to that since it's in federal airspace. So, or that's what they're claiming. But my argument is if they're spraying above us and it's coming down on us and our property, then we certainly have the right to defend ourselves and create this, criminal act. So it's ultimately gonna have to be done on a federal level. Tennessee passed this bill last year. Monty Fitz, he's the first one in the nation. And they're still spraying skies in Tennessee. Now, our whole Freedom Caucus went to Tennessee in Nashville back in November, and we videoed it because the sky was just blue as it could be. I do not think they're spraying as much there, but they certainly sprayed before we left. But it was a clear difference. Y'all remember the three-dimensional clouds when we were kids? Well, these, you don't see those anymore. And there used to be a bright, beautiful blue sky behind it. Now you see a dingy, silver-colored sky, and if they're not spraying that day, it doesn't matter. It's still in there. You'll look on the horizon, and there'll be a silvery gray look to it, and the sky is not that clear blue, crisp sky that I remember when I was a child, but I have not seen in years. And certainly we don't see it now. So with these cloud seeding and stratospheric aerosol injection, notice how we don't get any showers anymore. Everything comes in a torrential downpour. We get 3 to 5 to 10 inches, in a monsoon. And the cloud seeding guys are saying with Rainmaker, they're saying, well, we need to keep doing this because we stop a drought, or well, where are they right now with the fires that are here? If it's such a great idea and you want to play God, then where are they when we need them when 6,100 acres are on fire? Or that was at lunchtime today. I don't know how many, but zero containment. So my thoughts on that, and I talked to Dane about this last night to confirm my thoughts, is they do this the same way they do when they burnt down Lahaina, when they burnt down Palisade, and when they burnt down Paradise and Baja that you will not hear about. And probably no telling how many other small areas, that they're trying to practice on. But what they do with these particles in the air is, and NEXRAD, is they increase the frequencies on these particles, and it builds that pressure up, and it creates that wind to be stronger, just like it did with Helene, how they manipulated the frequencies there and intensified the storm. It's the same thing they're doing with these buildings. And I've been asking Dane for a year and a half anyway, about whether or not smart meters might have anything to do with this. And he never would answer me. Dane will not tell you anything unless he's 100% proven with it. So that's why I do most of my research with him. So I asked him about smart meters, and he finally came back after maybe a month or two after Palisade had burned down, and said, I've got video of houses burning from the inside out. So we're turning a bill in too to do away with smart meters.
You can opt out of them.
You can't.
It costs.
Yeah.
Contact your
Our company is like $150.
Yep, and it's $11 a month.
Yep. I don't want it.
Great information. Yes, I did not know that, but
Yes.
Also with this, I've got a bill turned in for fluoride in the water. And that's taking it out. But fluoride, they intertwine and interweb all this stuff. They're very intelligent. I mean, you know, you can't say they're dumb. All these micro nano aluminum particles coagulate with fluoride that they put in our water that we drink in our body. So any way they can magnify, you know, the damage that they're doing to us, they're gonna do. I even called a seed company because I said, well, I love farming, so I said, well, it's got to be getting in my soil. And so I called a seed company to find out if they came up or have a aluminum ready seed. You know, I'm sure you've heard a Roundup ready seed, which is a glyphosate seed base that you can spray Roundup on top of your crop and it doesn't kill it. Well, they have come out with aluminum ready seed. Come to find out, in Malaysia, they've created rice and a bicolor sorghum. So every time I turn around and do a little more research and a little more research, I'm not left feeling like I'm down the wrong rabbit hole. I keep finding stuff. I employ every one of y'all to do the same thing. You can pull up all these patents on these weapons. They're all patented. So the one guy that reached out to me from Rainmaker, he was very adamant, and I'm gonna let you run that video if you don't care, and that'll give. And we're gonna have a question and answer time. We're gonna let Dr. Jean Patan do something, and we're gonna play that little video while she's getting ready. And I think this is one of the most awakening things I believe I've seen recently, because it clearly is admittance of that they're doing cloud seeding, and it's clearly admitting that they're wanting to keep their job but not have stratosphere aerosol injection or geoengineering climate control to go on. So anyway, I think it's worth watching.
Hey, Mike. DeGustis Dorica, the CEO and founder of Rainmaker. We're a cloud seeding company that is enhancing precipitation via advanced radar and also drones for the sake of supplementing water supplies for farms, cities, reservoirs, and wildlife throughout the United States. Our ultimate vision is to end water scarcity, and we've begun that mission already. I'm testifying to not oppose the spirit of this bill, which I think is well-founded, but the current configuration of the bill that I think would impede this mission for ending water scarcity, and also for bringing the best-in-class technology to Florida and the rest of the United States. And so the first point that I'd like to make is the difference between solar radiation management and cloud seeding. And so Senator Garcia did bring this up briefly. Solar radiation management is a very new technology. It's not something that's been tested at length. NOAA has done some very initial experiments on its efficacy. It is attempting to reduce the amount of solar radiation that makes it down to the planet by injecting reflective aerosols into the upper atmosphere. Once you inject these aerosols, they stay in the stratosphere for years. They have effects on the entire climate. The data from these experiments, because the experiments have been so few, is limited. And so the implications of them are not something that are well tested yet. Cloud seeding is altogether different. The only similarity is that it has to do with the atmosphere. It has to do with the low atmosphere. It's a mechanism, or it's a tool that either freezes the water in existing clouds or condenses the droplets in existing clouds into bigger snowflakes or bigger droplets such that they fall onto your target watershed or farm. It's a technology that has existed for 80 years in the United States. It was patented by GE in 1946, but it hasn't been viable for a long time because we didn't have the appropriate radar to measure exactly what its effect is. I can tell you definitively that there is not cloud seeding going on in the state of Florida because you would be able to see its effect on radar. So the National Center for Atmospheric Research produced some great results from what's called the SNOWY campaign, where they were able to verify cloud seeding's effect, and they saw tens of millions of gallons of precipitation occur from each of their interventions. and that was very, very easily distinguishable on radar. It also is worth saying that it's local in its scope, and it is very short temporally. So if ever there is cloud seeding going on and you don't like the consequences of it, there are unintended consequences, and it's quite well characterized so the unintended consequences are minimal. You can stop whenever you like. So that point of differentiation between solar radiation management, which is something that I think the public should scrutinize more heavily, and cloud seeding, is important to make from the top. Then the second point I'd like to make is that, well, it has to do with the safety of cloud seeding, right? Because this has to do with environmental health, particularly pollution. Cloud seeding is conventionally done with a chemical called silver iodide. It's LD50, so its lethal dose is 10 times higher than aspirin. And we're using about 50 grams per each operation. That's as much as can fit in the palm of your hand, right? That's less flour than is in a slice of bread. So the amount that accumulates into watersheds is in the parts per trillion after decades of operation, and we have data to prove that from programs that exist throughout the United States. This leads me into another point, which is the precedent that other states have set in cloud seeding permitting and licensing. So I think that, per what I said at the top of my commentary, the spirit of this bill to protect Floridians, to protect Americans from environmental pollution, that is great. And I think that permitting and licensing absolutely should exist. It does exist in states like Texas and Utah and Idaho. So this isn't a blue state or red state issue. California has a process as well. New Mexico has a process. And we don't want anybody wantonly modifying the weather. So implementing a permitting regime so that it's only done responsibly and safely with best-in-class meteorological practices, that makes sense. And we advocate for that. Not only do we advocate for that, we, Rainmaker Technology Corporation, has engineers in all of those states that I mentioned that are actively modifying the weather, that are actively enhancing precipitation for farmers and reservoirs and cities that are undergoing drought. And that brings me into like my third and closing point. Like, what is this bill about? What are we voting on here? Yes, this has to do with Florida, first and foremost. I don't think that burdening the state with more regulation, with more permitting on investigation is something that it would necessarily be excited about, but if it was for the sake of protecting Floridians, that makes sense. I don't think that we want to prevent Florida's access to best-in-class technology for their agriculture and their water and their wildlife. But more than that, it has to do with the United States, both domestically and abroad. No ifs, ands, or buts. Mar-a-Lago exists here. Florida is a very consequential state within the United States. And if weather modification is banned here, that sets a precedent to deprive farmers in even more arid regions of the country from getting access to water from cloud seeding. And so if only for the sake of other Americans, for other farming interests, for other cities like Salt Lake, which is currently radically under budget for their water supply, and people are getting respiratory issues from the dust kicked up from the evaporation, cloud seeding could mitigate that. If this precedent is set here, it could affect other Americans. And not only could it affect us immediately within the United States, but long-term it could affect us geopolitically, because China has a $300 million annual budget for weather modification research and operations. And if we were to ban this here, if that precedent is set throughout the rest of the United States and perhaps federally, then we will lose control over the weather to China. And that's not something that I, as a patriot, or I think anybody else in Florida would advocate for. So in closing, I think that permitting and licensing for cloud seeding, which is a technology that other states throughout the union have adopted and created, I advocate for wholeheartedly. But SRM is something altogether.
So I'm not omitting it from my bill anymore. We're gonna take our chances. So if we get Dr. Jean Patan to speak to us, she can confirm and back up a lot of what I was talking about with the blood work. It's so nice to have her here today. She is such a sweet lady.
To see right here, because when I met with RFK, he said one thing to me that opened my heart forever. He said the most important thing in life to him was existential truth. I said, existential truth? That's truth that cannot be denied. I'm a lifestyle microscopist. I see truth every day. And he said, well, you better start telling it what's going on. So I'm thrilled to be here. I have a PhD in biological medicine. I've been in practice for 40 years. Ever since COVID, I've been in training with the most brilliant doctors in the entire world. I've been in training with Dr. Robert Young, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Del Batry, Dr. Judy Miklovitz, and my beloved Rashid Buttar, who I want to honor today for his courage. And that's one thing I want to say for Lee, and that is, Abraham Lincoln said that the greatest courage is to speak the truth out loud. And that is Lee. Let's applaud his courage, please. Applaud his courage in the memory of Dr. Buttar. And I've had the great privilege of also working with many specialists in the field of natural healing that are extremely concerned about what's going on as far as chemtrails are concerned. I live at High Hopland Sanctuary. I have lived there since 1996. I'm on the trails in my golf cart. And I was in the woods. Stop.
The video is still playing up there.
Yeah, there's still another noise coming from.
Well, that's Dane in the meeting.
Should I be quiet or talk?
Every time it says
Hey,
coffee.
Dave, we're running just a little behind.
And so I want to say, with the chemtrails, why? They want to gradually and secretly poison the masses, leading to population control and disease management. 2, to allow biotech companies, Monsanto, et cetera, huge, large profits with the contamination of our environment by aluminum. They're interested in mind control through nanoparticles. Chemtrails obviously block the sun, and we have gone into that. Now I'd like to talk about what it's doing to us. When I was on my golf cart, I saw a dead raccoon just in the woods, just laying there dead. Not attacked, not shot, just dead. Since 1996, I never saw an animal laying there dead. And now I see it, and it brings it home to me on every level. Now let's bring it home to your body and take a look. These are the nanoparticles that they're talking about that are in our bodies, that are picking up vibrational frequencies. And as you can see, the emanation coming from that contaminant. Next. We can go next. And what we have here again, you can see the emanations and how they're controlling the neurotransmitters in our body and in our brain. We'll go next. Again, the same. Do you see the emanation? Yep. Now the question we ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it? There's one thing that I do in my practice right now, and very fortunate that Tommy Trevette that owns True Blue is here at my booth. This is True Blue. I use this with every single client. I do compatibility testing to see if this is going to be their answer to demagnetize their body. 100% of the people I did contamination, detoxification have improved, 100%. So we have the power. And Tommy Trevette is right here, and he'll be happy to talk to you after we are finished. Now you're seeing graphene oxide, the black blobs that make the 3-foot-long blood clots that are in our body. Again, emanations of the toxic load. To see the frequencies that is coming out of these toxins, never before in 40 years have I seen anything like this before. We're being programmed on every level. Next. Again, this toxic load. What is this? I sent this picture to scientists I work with because I said, what is this? And then I found out. Next. This is graphene oxide particles that are contaminated with yeast and fungus. Why yeast and fungus? Because yeast and fungus cause cancer and autoimmune diseases. And they're being delivered into us all right now. Again, the toxic load in the body that is emanating frequencies. Go with next. Now, do you see the yeast and fungus in that black goo, which is graphene oxide, and it's magnetized, and our body has a magnetic charge which is negative. This graphene oxide has a positive charge, and it is magnetically drawn to our organs, wraps around the organs, and delivers the toxic load. Again, more of the same. This is the heavy metal poisoning that we're seeing with fungus forms involved. They are using 5G to activate this contamination in our body. I have seen underground videos of animals where they were causing diseases in the animals with 5G. This is our Crohn's disease group. This is our cancer group. This is our fibromyalgia group. This is our Parkinson's group. This is our multiple sclerosis group. Horrifying to see this state of mind. Nanoparticles, 5G receptors for disease. That's what is happening to us all. Another nanochip. They come in so many different forms, it's really mind-boggling. Do the different forms pick up different frequencies? Yes, they do. And are they delivering only frequencies? It's not only delivery, it's receptivity. They are controlling body, mind, and hoping to get our spirit, which they never will. They never will. Now this is a graphene oxide parasite, 5G activation. I saw it moving out of the hydrogel into the individual. And this is what the making of a 3-foot long blood clot looks like. This is the hydrogel. This is what's carrying the frequencies of 5G to cause diseases that wrap around our organ systems. But remember, wherever there's a challenge, there is a solution. Now when I see my clients, I have to spend 5 hours to evaluate over 170,000 functions the body engages in every 3 minutes to see where they're being attacked individually and set up their detoxification, their recovery, and their preventive maintenance. And that is my goal. Again, more transhuman computer chips in our bodies. One thing we have to do, and that's what Doug Allen is talking about, is protect ourselves from electromagnetic frequencies coming from the 5G. That's what I'm wearing right now, very attractive, but it's protecting me against EMFs.
What are you wearing?
This is a pendant that protects me from EMFs by increasing the power of my own energy field, so I'm not vulnerable to 5G attacks. And this is what I'm recommending for everyone, and not only them, but This is Morgellons. What this is doing is rewiring neurological function in our body. This either wraps around the organ, it either suffocates, causes inflammation, or causes numbness and tingling. But it is very critical to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And it attacks the vagus nerve, which is one of the most primary important functions of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, these are more of the EMF protectors. These are for your pets. These are for your animals. Remember, they are being affected just as we are. We are all being affected. This is Freedom DVDs, Know the Truth. You may want to take a picture of this with your phone. You may want to order it. There's all the DVDs you need about contamination of our environment, about weather manipulation. And we need to get the word out. Every first Saturday of the month, I'm showing these videos at a Well-Agizer Light Therapy Center at 9 o'clock till noon. You get wonderful light therapy treatment, which helps the molecules in your body recover their proper frequency. And I show DVTs to educate our population. Put on the armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And that's one thing we can do with True Blue. Talk to Tommy Trevette about it, because we can take nanoparticles out of the body, and it has been proven. This is what we are saving. This is what we are saving our lives right now. And it's important that we all stand together. Let's consider one thing. Let's consider putting our hands on our heart for a moment. The Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation must be withheld. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We, the people, secure these rights from our heart, our body, our mind, and our spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry we held Dane up. We got a little behind. Can you get him on now? One thing while she's trying to do that, thank you so much, Dr. Jean. While she's getting him up, when I say involvement, I'm starting a campaign with billboards around the state. It's a pretty expensive endeavor. I vowed to take the first month. Don't tell my wife. And we've got a QR code that Linda has for us. If you want to scan this, we have created a Go Send. What is it? Give, Send, Go. Angie has created that for us, and we're in the process of getting a nonprofit set up to do this.
But if you go to search for STOP, all capital, Geoengineering Billboard Fund, South Carolina, and then you go do the give, send, go. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Dane. We got a little
Apologize, I
behind.
didn't know who was talking to who there. So I never responded. I know it's been on for a long time. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you good. You got the floor.
Well, thank you for everybody who's attended. Thank you for everybody who's focusing on this issue now. And I hope that a continued investigation will make it clear why this is a top priority issue. I didn't focus the last 20 years of my life on this because it was just a particular arena of interest. It's the biggest hole in the bottom of the boat, period. And you guys are taking a brutal beating in Carolina, as you well know. And from Hurricane Helene to the fires that are burning right now, none of this can be separated from climate engineering, period. That's an indisputable statement if the climate engineering, AKA weather warfare factor, is plugged into this equation. So, and Lee, you can hear me, right, Lee, still? So
Yes, sir.
the fires are still raging there, correct, as of last check?
6,100 acres at lunchtime today, and I haven't seen another report yet this afternoon,
It's
but
nice.
no containment at all.
Helene leveled the forests, then they dried them out, now they're burning them in places. And again, we're no stranger to this scenario in California. If my presentation is going back a decade and a half on what would happen here if these programs are allowed to continue, and all of that has happened, continues to happen, it will continue to happen in Carolina and everywhere else if we allow these programs to continue. And I'm going to keep this short. I want to do a very brief overall, how dire is this scenario, and then I want to take Q&A because that tends to be most productive. Bottom line, mathematically, statistically speaking, if we stay on this current course, allowing the global covert climate intervention operations to continue, which is simply a covert form of weather warfare, it's the crown jewel weapon of the military-industrial complex. They can bring populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assaults. Carolina are one example. And again, their own populations, there's no nationalities involved in this. Those who control the strings are not beholden to any nation, they're beholden to themselves. And no occupant of the White House is pulling those strings. That should be clear at this point. I don't care what political stripe they wear. It's all theater of mass distraction. And although there may be some within some administrations that might be trying to do something, when you're swimming against a tide that big, AKA those who print the money, they fund militaries, thus they own countries, thus they own governments, period. The last US president to draw a line in the sand, truly draw a line in the sand with the power structure, was JFK. He lived about a week afterward. In regard to the fires, we have a US military document, 140 pages long, and all this can be found at geoengineeringwatch.org. It's titled Forest Fires as a Military Weapon. I believe our post is titled Firestorms as a Military Weapon, but it's under our Engineering Wildfires section. That document describes everything we see happening from places like Lahaina to Pacific Palisades to North Carolina and a countless amount of other locations. A drying out of those regions, they're coated with an incendiary dust. The climate engineering elements are, it's not speculation. Aluminum nanoparticles, which we know is in the precipitation, thus it's in the air column, is such a powerful incendiary that it's used in military demolitions. So again, in this document, it's of course alarming that they would consider firestorms as a military weapon, but what's even more alarming is within this document, 17 locations within the continental United States are named as study locations. Why? From our own military. So again, we can speculate on agendas and objectives, like in the case of Hurricane Helene, the lithium mine, and so forth, and people that didn't want to get off the land, and there's many, many layers to this, and we can speculate about all of that. The fact that this is inseparable from weather modification is indisputable. And stop to consider, there's likely many amongst you that have heard of Project Popeye in Vietnam, US weather modification, weather warfare operations there in the 60s that were so effective at controlling and manipulating precipitation over Vietnam that they passed international treaties in the 70s. Do we really think that after so many years, they're not exponentially more effective now, and that they couldn't alter these scenarios that are increasing with intensity every day instead of augmenting them, which we know these programs are? So again, however bitter a pill it may be, to realize that our own government is being utilized in ways against its own population, and this is from compartmentalization. I want to stress that military personnel are being told they're doing something beneficial, something for the greater good. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Did the pilots in Vietnam realize, or were they told, that spraying Agent Orange would kill their comrades on the ground, not to mention countless civilians? Same with U.S. military testing in Nevada. How many people know that the nuclear detonations in Nevada, based on a peer-reviewed study, indirectly killed no less than 500,000 Americans, the downwinders, they're called? How many people know that? So governments don't ask permission for what they do. They do it because they can, because populations have so far been too distracted to stand up, reach the pitchforks and torches moment, and hold everyone participating actively or passively. I want to stress that. Just doing your job because you're told to do that is not an excuse. The Nuremberg trials didn't excuse people on that basis. So from media to so-called experts, local meteorologists, state officials, agency officials, which I personally know are lying. I've been in high-level environmental waste meetings in California, shown tests that they didn't know where this bioavailable aluminum was coming from. They've never disclosed those tests. And from meetings all the way up to Governor Gavin Newsom, I've had personal meetings with him in his office. His top aide presented data they couldn't refute, didn't try. Nothing from any of these people. Are they not criminal accomplices to these crimes? So climate engineering, again, stated purpose, to slow down the warming of the planet by spraying light-scattering particles into the atmosphere with no consideration of the consequences. When dealing with this issue, it's very important to use the science terms. I cannot stress that enough. The chemtrails term is the instant marginalization term. We're playing chess. We need to learn how to play well, effectively, efficiently. Stick to the science terms. Climate engineering, good, very easy to understand term. Geoengineering, solar radiation management, cloud albedo enhancement, stratospheric aerosol injection. There's lots of terms, but climate engineering alone is a superior term than the chemtrails term, which some in the alt media community won't let go of, and it seems to be a matter of pride with them. This is not a battle of pride, it's a battle of survival. So their stated goal of slowing the warming of the planet by spraying light scattering particles into the sky with no consideration of the destruction of the ozone layer, which we are likely a year or two away from functional collapse of the ozone layer, not from hairspray cans. Climate engineering, core causal factor, ozone destroying, oxidizing particulates and frequency transmissions. That by itself is an immediate existential threat. Disruption of the hydrological cycle and contamination of virtually every single breath we take. How is this not an immediate fight for life? And when other countries step out of line, they are annihilated with climate intervention operations. We have some of those countries, in the case of Iran, I wonder why they have such disdain for us, stating on the floor of the UN that NATO is cutting off their precipitation, destabilizing their food production, thus their populations. Did U.S. media cover that? No. And they know what's going on upwind. They can see that. They have sophisticated radar equipment. And how many other countries from sub-Saharan Africa to the Middle East are dealt with in this manner? When Dubai began to step out of line in summer of last year, I believe, they got 2 years worth of rain in 6 hours, wiped them out because they were going to disconnect from the dollar. Was that a shot across their bow? We see right now fires burning in South Korea. The all-time worst wildfires burning in South Korea right now because South Korea doesn't seem to be towing the line. Is that just a coincidence? So the bottom line is we face a paradigm in which the controllers are increasingly desperate and dangerous, from pathogen release to false flag to triggering global conflict. We need the American population to wake up and do some diligent research. Don't bite at any headline dangled before you from any online source or site that has something to say about an issue that it's not credible or not vetted. Make sure you're sharing credible data from a credible source. Understand that, yes, there are many important issues we need to deal with. The list is long indeed. But if this biggest hole in the bottom of the boat isn't dealt with, what's being sprayed into our skies, which we cannot hide from, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, all of those elements toxic. When you combine them, the toxicity goes through the roof. It's called synergistic toxicity. If we don't deal with this, game over. All other causes and concerns become moot. And I don't mean decades from now. We are on an unimaginably short timeline. And as the population wakes up to what's being done to them, I would argue again the controllers will be even more desperate. And we know, in addition to the catastrophes like Helene and the fires in Carolina right now, we know with two of those elements, graphene and polymer fibers, they're used militarily for biological carrier platforms to carry a biological element from the clouds to the ground, again in biological warfare purposes. What's that doing in our rain? We have Italian researchers that identified CV19 attached to airborne particulates. We have the second most recognized climate engineer in the world, Dr. Ken Caldera. We own an audio of him at geoengineeringwatch.org stating what he did for the US government was to design ways of spraying pathogens into clouds to infect the populations below. So what I'm pointing out is in addition to weather warfare, this is certainly biological warfare from any perspective, even if you look at the toxicity of the elements being used. And we're not guessing on that either. For those that don't know or haven't seen the Dimming documentary from geoengineeringwatch.org, which we posted for free the day it was done. We haven't monetized anything. We spent way into 6 figures on that film. We took a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab to altitude, top scientists in it, sampled what these heavy aircraft were emitting, processed that at Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York, world-renowned laboratory, found exactly what we would find, starting with aluminum nanoparticles, which is toxic to all life forms, period. So when Helene came into Carolina and the forests were leveled, those root systems were already compromised from toxic aluminum particles in the rain, killing soil microbiome, killing root systems. There are so many layers to this issue. I'll summarize it with this and then I'll get to Q&A. Bottom line, we face a right here, right now, fight for life. I am deeply grateful for Lee Gelraith for what he has done and other representatives that are trying as well. Lee has gone above and beyond. I'm honored to call him my friend, and I'm so grateful to try to help with this effort in the Carolinas, and so many people are focused on you in South Carolina because of what's been done to you. And if we put big enough fire to this equation, if we start and stoke a big enough bonfire of awareness that can't be put out, and we put this issue on the radar, the fur will fly. We will cause a shockwave around the globe. We will alter the equation. I'm not saying our problems are over, they're just beginning. But we will have taken a quantum leap in the right direction. But that effort will absolutely take all of us. We're all spokes in the wheel, all necessary to make it roll. At geoengineeringwatch.org, there's an activist suggestions link to help point out exactly what you can do from your own home computer for free to share links and start other spot fires of awareness, ask others to do the same. But if we all work together, we can put this issue on the radar. We're gaining momentum. Lee has done so much to help that happen. It's our honor to help him at geoengineeringwatch.org. I'll take Q&A now, Lee.
Thanks so much, Dane, for joining us and all those kind words. We appreciate everything that you do and the years that you've put into this. We just can't thank you enough. I was going to ask a question real quick about the methane gases that we're dealing with too, if you could speak on that just a second.
Okay, to elaborate on the methane situation, most of your listeners have probably heard that it's cow flatulence that we have to worry about. That narrative is designed to polarize populations and take their eyes off the real problem. Climate engineering, the attempt to mask the warming of the planet, has only made it worse. Short-term toxic surface cool downs at the cost of a worsened overall warming. So for those in the Carolinas, I'm sure know that recently there was a blizzard in New Orleans and Florida. What didn't they tell us? That during that exact window of time, while the flakes were flying along the Gulf Coast, it was well above freezing and raining in Alaska, Siberia, Greenland, Iceland, Moscow. Nobody said a word about that. And as soon as the moisture is gone and the chemical ice nucleation operations, and by the way, that's engineered winter. They have patented processes, they're called endothermic cracking elements, they're toxic as well. They seed the clouds with these elements, and that literally causes ice to nucleate at much higher than normal temperatures. It causes a chemical cool down, a chemical freeze. Think of the first aid kit that sits on your home shelf for 20 years at room temperature. You mix the ice pack chemicals together, you have ice instantly. It's that on an unimaginable scale. So these cool downs are absolutely not nature. They're climate engineering. And when they cool a region down like this, they can sensationalize the headlines of how cold it is in New Orleans. No mention of the rest of the world in meltdown. And in the Arctic, back to the methane, if everyone there would take the time to search Siberian methane craters. We have some images of these in the Deming documentary, Geoengineering Watch. But you have to see these images to believe it. It looks like massive nuclear bomb detonations because the methane is heating, thawing, and exploding into the atmosphere. For those that are familiar with the Bermuda Triangle scenario, that's methane release from the sea floor. This has been solid scientific consensus for a very long time. They don't really try to publicize this so people don't understand what's actually happening. So when these methane fields on the sea floor warm slightly, whole fields release it once. As the methane's migrating to the surface, it aerates the water column. And any surface vessel that's over the top of that release has no buoyancy. It goes to the bottom intact. That's exactly what has happened. And this methane is now migrating into the atmosphere because it's lighter than air. It's covering the planet like a layer of glass. Methane over a 10-year time horizon is 120 times more potent at trapping heat than CO2. We don't hear much talk about this on mainstream media either. So climate engineering in the attempt to hide this is making it worse, not better. So again, that's another immediate existential threat. Thawing and releasing methane fields on top of the ozone problem. We've been told until only a few weeks ago that most of the deposits, methane hydrate and clathrate, were in the Arctic. Now we know Antarctica contains much more still. There's enough methane deposits, if that methane thaws and releases and enters the atmosphere, there's enough to turn this planet into Venus many times over, and that's not a metaphor. That's a literal scenario. It's called Venus syndrome. You can search geoengineeringwatch.org Venus syndrome, you see data on that. So this is not about Al Gore. It's not about the environmental groups, all of whom played criminal hypocrisy because they will not admit the climate engineering elephant in the equation because they don't want to lose their funding, their 501 nonprofits. They're absolutely criminal. So again, I want to point out this equation is complex, many layers. It's important to know what those layers are so that when we convey this message to others, we're standing on the building blocks of the issue. Stay on course. That's how you get people to wake up.
Dane, God bless you and Lee. We've got a new representative here in April Cromer in South Carolina that are doing things that the creeps that have been in there for decades have done nothing about. So God bless you and thank you. My question is, who actually orders the chemtrails? Who actually funds it besides the USAID? And who actually chooses the ingredients? So who orders them, who funds them, and who chooses the ingredients? Thanks.
On the first two questions, it's the same source. Those who print money from thin air are pulling those strings. And they have been for so very long. And again, elected offices are simply used as smoke and mirrors to divide and polarize populations, and they have to make the theater ever more outrageous and convincing, otherwise people would lose interest. So again, I want to stress it's all roads lead to those who print and control the money. And the Federal Reserve is not federal anything for those that understand the banking system. It's private bankers. And they're the ones that control those levers, period. And this will take, again, the pitchforks and torches moment, populations standing up in unison and at that point hopefully providing cover for the so far less than courageous in academia to stand up and start telling the truth. But once we put a break in the dam, once we blow this issue out into the open, and it's gaining ground by the day now, and my thanks to Lee for all he's done there to make that happen in your region. But once we put that break in the dam, there'll be no plugging it. This shockwave will travel around the globe as populations realize what their governments have done to them without their knowledge and consent. At that point, we can alter the paradigm. Again, we face unimaginable challenges under any scenario, but no matter how long the odds are, the example I've given before, if your child was in a burning house and you knew you had almost no chance to save them, would you not try? We have to try. And if we try together, who knows what we might get accomplished. On the elements that are in this mix, there are likely many hands in that equation, none of whom take the consequences of these elements into account. So again, we have sterilized soils now around the globe. Aluminum toxic to all life forms, period. And to give you an idea of this, you can see their attitude if you watch the Dimming documentary, as I confronted the world's most recognized climate engineer, Dr. David Keith. In fact, for simply asking a question at that conference. I was banned from the subsequent conferences. But nevertheless, I got that question answered, and it has haunted the geoengineering community since. My question to Dr. Keith after a 3.5-hour symposium of putting tens of millions of tons of aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually, my question to him was, have any toxicological studies been done? And his response initially was, well, we looked at how much particulate matter was in the sky, and we concluded a little more won't hurt. Wait a minute, my follow-up question before they cut me off. Those particles aren't aluminum. Have you studied aluminum? And his answer was, no, we haven't. Could terrible things happen tomorrow? We don't know. What kind of an answer is that from the world's foremost geoengineering scientists? These people do not care about the consequences. In fact, let me carry that further. On the consequences, especially related to human health, that's a benefit to those in power. Because if we're sucking up these toxic metals and our cognitive ability is waning by the day, and it is, I'm not speculating, IQs have dropped 6 to 9 points in the US in the last generation. 6 to 9 points. We're getting dumber by the day. Does that not make this easier for the controllers to manipulate, just like fluoride in our water? And any notion that it's gotten better in the last couple of years is not reality. It's gotten worse. And that doesn't mean it hasn't gotten worse in every previous administration. It's consistently getting worse with each passing year. It's certainly it has been accelerated. And that's when the New Orleans snowstorms, the most blatant chemical cool downs we have seen yet, the most blatant climate engineering operations in that sense we've seen to date, happened on January 21st. Something to keep in mind.
Hi, I have 3 questions. One is, do you have knowledge or are you aware of Miguel Larson running the geoengineering chemtrail program out of Clemson University? The second being, is there any advantage to the blue roof and the dew situation? The third being the methane bubble. Is that what's also causing the planes to fall from the sky?
Okay, on the individual you mentioned, not familiar with him, but universities have geoengineering programs, but they are not acknowledging the existing deployment of these operations. It's all smoke and mirrors to convince populations they're just proposals, which they're not.
Dan, can I interrupt you 2 seconds on that before you move to the next question? I sat on a 2-hour Zoom call meeting with Clemson University, and they only spoke of global warming, rising waters, and I asked them if they'd taken any of their millions of dollars and done any research on geoengineering, climate control, and they wouldn't even answer my question. So I think you're spot on with Clemson. I don't think they had anything. Sorry.
Thank you for that corroboration. Yeah, they're told this is a no-go issue. And a quick point too, since we're on the subject of the state of the climate, to build bridges in the fight to stop climate engineering instead of burning them would highly suggest that the whole state of the climate discussion be sidestepped to this mantra. When anybody has anything to discuss about that and they try to divert to that issue, I would suggest responding this way. How can we have any legitimate discussion of climate anything from any perspective without first and foremost addressing the climate engineering elephant in the equation? No one can rationally argue with that. So for those that have been taught and trained, this is on the academic left and other circles in that arena, that if someone mentions geoengineering, they're denying all the other forms of damage to the planet. That's not true. That's not Geoengineering Watch anyway. We recognize all those forms of damage. But how can we address the overall picture when we're leaving the biggest single piece of the puzzle out of the picture? You can't. So we're learning to play chess. We need to learn how to play well. About the other narratives that surface, blue roofs and directed energy weapons, I would strongly suggest not venturing into that field, if you will, in that the Blue Roof scenario is again, there's no data that can be based anything on that. There's no science, there's no anything, and again, it becomes a polarizing issue, blue, Democrat, this, anything in that arena is polarizing and destructive to the cause. In regards to laser weapons, if some study is done on laser physics, although the current technology would likely make it possible to ignite a fire on the ground from an airborne platform, if there were no obstructions in the air, that means no clouds, no smoke, no blowing dust, nothing. Laser, anything doesn't work if there's any particulate matter in the air, period. So, the laser platform that it would take to accomplish some of the claims that many are making online weighs 1.8 million pounds. It takes 18 semi-trucks to move it. That's not flying around in our skies. So that whole narrative has been so harmful to this cause that I know many top officials in the world's largest firefighting agency, CAL FIRE. And they will not touch the climate engineering issue because they don't want to be associated with the whole do narrative scenario. And as far as the trees burning, and when you see pictures of trees burning on the inside and people claiming you got hit with a laser beam, that is so patently and totally false and destructive to this cause. And I speak firsthand. I fought wildland fires front lines on equipment and on the ground, side by side with Forest Service and CAL FIRE. This is a common sight in the forest because the UV is so intense. It's now burning the Cambrian layer off many deciduous trees from tip to trunk. So there's a big bare stripe up the tree, rotted corewood inside, and when the embers are blowing, it ignites that dry corewood and you get a stripe of burning fire all the way up the tree. It has nothing to do with laser or anything. So what I'm saying is, stick to credible building block data if you want to successfully convey this issue. If people don't accept what they can see in the sky, an aircraft clearly dispersing elements that settle down through the air column and we're breathing, it's disrupting our weather, toxifying our soils and waters, keep it simple. Building blocks, help these people to wake up and don't overload them with conjecture that then completely shuts them down and they never look back. So again, we need to learn how to fight effectively in this battle.
Yes, I have an observation and then a question about it. I have a timeshare in Lake Lure that I've used for many years, and after the pandemic, I noticed all these chemtrails in the sky, much more than I've ever noticed, and I have photos to document it. And I'm wondering, since Lake Lure is in the area that got hit with the hurricane and all the fires, is there a way that we could see when they're ramping up like an area to have this destructive effect?
Certainly, if you watch water vapor loops, depending on the loop, and they're trying to filter the obvious dispersions out from those loops, because some loops made it very obvious, they were very visible. But even then, depending on what the weather is going to do, an incoming front typically will mean they'll be spraying in front of that incoming AR atmospheric river. There are certain conditions that are more conducive to the aerosol dispersions. That's where we would expect to see them. But in general, there's absolutely no place to hide from the fallout. Even if you don't see anything above you, what falls in a particular location is what's been dispersed upstream, not directly overhead. And based on the studies that we've taken working with University of Minnesota, hundreds of rain tests over that state, and quantifying the materials in the rain, extrapolating that and projecting it over globally, it appears something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of these nanoparticles are being sprayed annually. 40 to 60 million tons. And the why question comes up a lot. I want to get to this in case nobody asked it. The why would they do this to themselves question. We hear it all the time at geoengineering.org. Or they wouldn't do this to themselves, so people walk away thinking they wouldn't do this. Well, they already have. Again, 2,400 nuclear detonations. That's contaminated everything on the planet. Nobody asked anybody's permission for that. Fukushima total meltdown. There's no technology to fix Fukushima. Some people think because the media hasn't covered it, it's all better. It couldn't be further from the truth. That's a triple nuclear meltdown with no end in sight, no technology to fix it. We have 442 more nuclear plants around the globe. We're building 60 more right now. Are we dealing with sanity? No, we're not. And as far as connecting nuclear Armageddon with climate engineering, now that climate engineering has compromised our protective atmosphere and we're much more susceptible to a CME, a coronal mass ejection, if we have a large event like the Carrington event in the 1800s, and that shuts down grids around the globe, which other factors are going to do soon, one way or the other, there's many factors. Now we have a whole lot of Fukushimas. What do we do then? So from every perspective, climate engineering is pounding the nails into our collective coffins. This has to be a top priority issue or nothing else will matter.
We got, dang, we're running out of time. I think we've got to be, Angie, is that right?
About 15 more minutes.
Okay, we got a little bit of time. Okay, sorry.
Hi, Dane. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing. My question is, as an individual, what is the most impactful thing as an individual person we can do to help stop what's going on?
At the end of the dimming, and I don't know how many have seen the dimming, but at the end, the editor who remained anonymous, he kind of came out of nowhere and helped us finish that film in spite of massive challenges that were thrown in front of us. But at the end of the dimming, the message that he captured that I wanted to say is that any one of us could be the final pebble to trigger the landslide of awakening. Once we reach a critical mass, the equation will change. Any one of us could be, again, that final pebble that triggers it. So from your own home computer, if people became diligent, seek out contacts for environmental articles, reports, environmental groups, elected officials, media people. Seek out people that obviously should know and should be talking about this issue. Send them a link to the dimming. Very short, professional, peaceful message. Why is this not being addressed? And CC as many aware and awake, rational, concerned individuals as you can. Openly CC them, friends, family, so that whoever you're sending that link to understands that many people are waiting for their response, not just one. And that's one way to hold them accountable. And you can, again, keep a list of even those people as this issue is forced to light, and it is being forced to light. There's no hiding this. I want to stress that. For all the people that want to deny this issue and ram their heads in the sand, this issue is like no other. You can put 9/11 in the rearview mirror. You can put the whole COVID scenario in the rearview mirror. You cannot put this in the rearview mirror. It's getting bigger and more ominous in front of the windshield every single day. It will be exposed one way or the other. So when you share with people, share with confidence that know and know yourself that they will be forced to face this issue, like it or not, soon. So share those credible data links from a credible source, and I stress that because there's so many internet people that see YouTube clicks with this issue, and they conjure up every clickbait title they can. They know nothing about it, and people are sharing anything from anyone that has anything to say about it. That doesn't help our cause. That's just poking more holes in the boat that we need to float on. So credible data from a credible source, send those spot fires of awareness out, and in doing so, and asking others to stoke that fire as well, that's how we collectively can push this issue to the light of day, because we don't need to line up like the British did in columns and fight and fire at the same time under orders. We can fight like the colonists from behind rocks and trees based on our individual circumstances and situation, if you understand the metaphor there. So all of us can and must be an immense help in this fight. And if we all work together, there'll be so many spot fires, they can't put them out. We'll push this issue to light, the fur will fly, we'll change the equation.
Hi, do you know who in Congress voted for this? And is this going to require a vote in the United States Congress to end it? Or could an executive order by the president end it? And what do you think the chances are?
None. And no. Nobody voted for this. These are black ops operations. It's considered national security. The denial on this issue is massive. I mean, in our film, The Dimming, there's 2 U.S. Air Force generals, both friends, that acknowledged this, and a former high-ranking Army general, Bert Stubblebine, a former friend. He's passed away now under suspicious circumstances, but he also acknowledged this along with 9/11. So any subject like this, those that are in circles of government and military, they all typically, with almost no exceptions, they know how long their leashes are. And they refuse to hit the end of those leashes. And as far as whistleblowers go, again, illegal federal gag order on all National Weather Service and NOAA employees, nation's weathermen. Why in the world would we need a gag order on the nation's weathermen if there wasn't something massive to hide? And I was contacted 3 weeks ago by Robert Kennedy, who I've interviewed with before, and in our conversation, and I don't know what this administration is going to do, again, or not, on this issue. I've seen nothing tangible so far. I hope that changes, I really do. My discussion with Robert, what I tried to focus most intently on, was unless or until this government implements whistleblower protection, solid, carved in stone, well-publicized whistleblower protection, there will be no whistleblowers. What happened to the whistleblower in the illegal U.S. torture program? John Carrico. He's the only one that went to jail. The only one. And that's how those people are dealt with. So far, we've seen nothing tangible. Robert Kennedy on Sunday did tweet that the Maha people should support the state governments, the state legislatures that are trying to pass bills. But we need to see something from the federal government, not just cheerleading for the state governments. Let's hope that happens.
Dane, I actually have a question too. One thing I'm fighting on my bill is everybody's saying in the South Carolina House is that we have it's FAA airspace, so we can't do anything anyway to criminalize the planes or the pilots. What can we do about that to try to help get that bill along? They're dropping stuff on us clearly, on our land and on us as citizens.
The entire system has been set up for decades to make it difficult, if almost impossible, to fight this issue. So those kinds of provisions will be encountered. But if, just like the Tennessee legislation that passed, and Florida just cleared another hurdle today, and as we put more and more blips on the radar, more and more red flags up, and media finds it more and more difficult to marginalize this, if you will, and they will. They are trying to marginalize anybody that makes any progress. They try to marginalize them. But even though it's difficult and not impossible to enforce legislation to stop the spraying over any particular state, we're pushing it to light. Again, if we can push this to the full light of day, the wheels will turn as people in militaries and agencies and legal arenas realize they are fighting for their lives. They're not exempt. They're not on the inside circle. They're going down on the same ship the rest of us are going down on. Only then can we move this fight forward. So as far as those provisions, Lee, there are many of those types of hurdles. They have to be sidestepped with human health issues and focus on that as much as possible, and just try to sidestep any blockade that someone tries to throw up, and they'll continue to try. They are desperate to hide this issue, desperate.
I would like to know about the people that are in charge of doing all of this stuff with the black ops. That's people that are running the planes or whatever. What are they doing to protect their health, or do they not care about their own self and their safety?
It's important to realize that the vast majority of people involved are compartmentalized. They have no idea the totality of what they're doing. They don't bother to investigate. Again, I cite the spraying of Agent Orange in Vietnam, or the detonation of 2,400 plus nuclear bombs. If any of you know what the Milgram experiments are, that's a very good example of an unfortunate aspect of human nature. And what those experiments did, again, it's worth looking into because that would give a much better understanding of the situation. But the vast majority of individuals will do whatever they're told, including inflict lethal harm on what they perceive to be an innocent individual, if they believe they're being told to do so by someone in authority. That should scare all of us. No matter who's telling you to do what, if you're being asked to do something that's clearly wrong on an unbelievable scale, obviously we must not conform to that. But again, we've seen that in how many instances, just following orders sort of scenario. And as far as those at the very top, are they exempt? We know about methods of chelation, one facility in Germany, and we know one individual that made it into that facility and their blood is taken out. They're on a table for almost a day, but their blood is basically cycled through them, through filters, processors, everything taken out, and it's put back in. I mean, it's a very elaborate process, not available to you or I, but the chelating of these materials, we don't know all the aspects of this process, but this facility does exist. There are likely more. But in such sophisticated chelation, those in power could, if done annually, for example, exempt themselves from many of the health consequences for probably extended time. So again, we can't know all the cards they're holding, but the bottom line is there's no debate, there's no theorizing, hypothesizing. These materials are in our air column. We know the effects, scientifically indisputable, and we see the consequences. I mean, our planet is virtually imploding. Global insect population is down 80 to 90% right now. The pollinators, the bees, and this is headlines right now all over the US, they're crashing, virtually crashing. And even though the statistics say beekeepers lost 60% of their hives this winter alone, that's 60% of what's already about an 80% decline. So we're down to about 5% of the pollinators left, of the bees. I mean, it's a catastrophe. Geoengineering Watch, our first large source to publish insect populations crashing in 2012. Based on our work with former government and state scientists, the science community tried to marginalize this. Now they've had to admit to it because they can't hide it. Fisheries are collapsing around the globe. Forests are collapsing around the globe. Again, I cannot stress how dire our situation is, but we all need to polish our faith, our philosophy, and remember what's in our control and what's not. Focus on what is. Don't get shut down because this isn't a tale with an ABC happy ending. You know, do this, that, and we'll all live happily ever after. Now is when we find out why we're here and what we're made of. And again, if I would argue there's solace in facing the storm head on and knowing you are part of the cure and not the disease. Anybody else?
We have maybe two more, and then we gotta go.
Okay, no problem.
I have a thought. I don't know if it would work, but since there seems to be so many people that have access to RFK Jr., maybe we could ask him if he could call Elon and the Doge team and investigate where the money's coming from and defund them.
I wish it was so simple. Again, we're talking about Black Ops money, so there's no defunding that matters. And some of the sources that were relating to weather that were defunded were localized state weather modification programs, and I want to stress that's a completely different animal. So that didn't affect climate engineering at all, because I saw some publications about that, like that, if what was affecting this. To compare the localized weather modification programs, single engine propeller driven aircraft with some flares in the wings, to compare that with climate engineering would be to compare an ant with an elephant. And they don't want you to see the elephant, they want you to see the ant. So bottom line is no, it won't stop that way. And I think we should ask ourselves, and again, I am not politically oriented. Biden didn't know what planet he was on. I'm just stating that we need to get past any notion that political anything is anything other than theater, with the exception of individuals like Lee, of which there are precious few. And again, which I'm honored, I'm absolutely honored to call my friend, and I look forward to crossing paths with Lee at some point and hopefully meeting some of you. But again, and we need to remember and consider this, that we are the ones we've been waiting for. And if we can put this issue on the radar, that's all it will take, and many other wheels will turn on their own. We already tried to sue, and it helped in a sense. We sued at the cost of over 6 figures one of the primary climate engineering disinformation scientists, worked for Cornell, Carnegie Science, MIT, and Caltech. And although we knew the government would side with him, which they did, even though he was patently responsible for what we sued him for, we made Bloomberg News. We made big headlines on Bloomberg News. And that put a chill into the community of those that are trying to hide this issue. So again, all these separate steps, all these separate bonfires of awareness, that's what we need to do to put this issue on the radar. Fighting like the colonists, behind rocks and trees, and not thinking that we need to have some massive organization. We can each separately or individually, and you can work together with someone, of course, to compile lists of who to email and coordinate certain things, but every single day we can all send off those flaming arrows of awareness. The more we do that, the sooner we're going to push this issue to light.
Yeah, that's good. Thank. We got one more question.
Sure.
Before that, I just wanted to it just popped up on my phone. The sky shielding movement is soaring with Michigan's recent announcement. Bill number pending. U.S. 25 states are officially moving to ban atmospheric geoengineering. And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. responded to that saying 24 states moved to ban geoengineering our climate by dousing our citizens, our waterways, and our landscapes with toxins. This is a movement every Maha needs to support. HHS will do its part. Hopefully that gives us a little bit of hope, but we all can't rest. The question I had was around, and this is going to sound a little wacky, but are they terraforming the planet?
Who would they be?
The bankers. It could be whoever's behind the bankers. I don't want to go all in.
Again, what I would argue is this: there is nothing, and I'm a student of cosmology. I can't imagine we're in the universe alone. But that being said, if any life form was intelligent enough to survive itself, which it doesn't appear we're going to on the current course, and could reach, this location, and I would only think they would be benevolent. But aside from that whole field of discussion, there is nothing in this equation that we can't pin directly on humans behaving poorly to suit their own agendas and objectives, period. And as far as Robert's tweet, because we can track this all the way back to its inception, deployment right after World War II, all the building blocks that led into that, all the weather warfare aspects in continents around the globe being used to bring countries to their knees. All these elements have to be remembered, or the equation becomes simplified. And people, again, it's like George Bush on the deck of that ship. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Wait a minute, there's a hell of a lot of middle ground there, isn't there, George? Again, I'm pointing out that it's not a left or right, blue or red, Democrat. It's a very complex equation, but it's humans behaving poorly, using weather as a weapon, which has been a coveted weapon for many, many decades. How many of you have seen, at the beginning of, on geoengineeringwatch.org, we have a weekly broadcast. I've completed 502 in a row now. Never failed. We pay for that out of pocket. Stations around the country. No advertising, no politics. At the beginning, it's the most news you can fit into 55 minutes, by the way. If you want to know what's happening every week, gloves off, as fast as you can digest it, that's where you're going to find it. Posted at geoengineeringwatch.org every week. But at the beginning of that, to answer this question, is Lyndon Johnson on film, former U.S. President Lyndon Johnson, on film, on the record. You can see him if you tune into that broadcast. In 1962, ranting like a lunatic, stating we had the power to control the world's cloud layer then, and quote, he who controls the weather controls the world. Why? Because he who controls the weather controls food supplies, thus controls populations, thus controls everything. It's humans behaving poorly, period.
Dane, I can't tell you how much we all appreciate you coming. And I think everybody knows who the smartest one in the room is. You did a wonderful, wonderful job, and I think very awesome job of explaining to everybody, helping us all to understand. And we just can't tell you how thankful we are for your time.
team effort, guys. I hope we have a chance to meet one day, but I'm eternally grateful for all of you. When I started this battle 20 plus years ago, I only heard my own voice coming back at me. No one listened to anything I said. And when people now come across my path, like Lee and the rest of you, it puts the wind in my sails. I am very deeply, immensely grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a blessed evening. I want to just say again, thank y'all all for coming out. It does my heart good too, because I've been telling the story to my wife. She's sick of it. My kids, they're sick of it. So I got somebody to listen to now. Listen to me. But again, I want to say awareness and education and involvement. That's the key to this thing right now. So just thank y'all so much for being involved.
Thank you, Lee, thank you, Dane. Angie and I, we just kind of started this little idea. Let's try this. Do you like this? Okay. So I'm not sure how we just kind of put it out there on Facebook and stuff. My magazine is Locally Grown Greenville. You can email me. We're going to try to keep doing what we're doing. We may start a little YouTube channel, Healthy Town USA or something. So keep us in touch. If you guys like this, we'll try to do these things again. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Can you send out a recording of the meeting?
We did record it tonight. We are going to create a YouTube channel, and then we'll start doing this and putting our videos out there. So somebody asked about the website for Dane. That is GEO Engineering Watch GEO Engineering Watch.org. So, and it'd be really nice too if anybody here wanted to send him a thank you note.